Welcome to our Study Abroad podcast series. So, today we have Neel from University of British Columbia. So, we'll be knowing about his journey from India to UBC. So, welcome Neel to our podcast.
Thank you so much, Vishal. I'm excited to be here and speak to you.
Sure, sure. So, Neel, when was the very first time you thought that there is some study abroad plans in your mind, or you thought that okay, maybe you should go abroad for some study, some exposure, etc.
I think this was way back in 2019, right before COVID. I was working with this organization called Teach for India. Teach for India is actually known for their nonprofit program. And I was working as a public school teacher in Ahmedabad back in the day. And I was very keen on learning a little more about public policy governance from a different ecosystem, which is not India per se. I think that was the first time I thought that, I want to go abroad. I want to pursue my higher studies, learn from people, learn from diverse set of people, and then take those learnings back and come back to India. So that's when it started for me for the first time.
Sure, sure. And after that, when you started thinking about going and you had like some colleges in mind, how many countries and colleges did you apply for?
Yeah, so between 2019 and almost 2024 now, I think my plans changed completely. I started thinking I'll study public policy, but then I thought I'll study Masters in Business Administration and MBA because I wanted to have like a diverse and a broad range of subjects that I wanted to study. And my my long-term plans sort of shifted eventually. So I was mostly looking at North America. That was my first preference. I wanted to be in a place either between US and Canada. And then when I decided to start my applications for my MBA program last year, I only boiled down to Canada. There are multiple reasons for that. I think because the kind of program that I was looking for, it was mostly suited to Canadian context. I wanted to be in sustainability, social impact, social enterprises per se, and Canada has a robust system for that. And I wanted to study in Vancouver because Vancouver is a beautiful place in terms of just the ecosystem that Vancouver had to offer, which is where University of British Columbia is located. So yeah, I ended up choosing Canada as the prime country in North America and applied for the MBA programs here.
So you applied to just one college or a few colleges in Canada?
So I wanted to apply to 5 colleges, but in my order of priority, I wanted to focus on certain colleges in the first round and then certain colleges in the second round. UBC was my first preference, so I ended up applying there in the very first round. And I thought I'll apply to other colleges only after I hear back from UBC, but luckily I got accepted in UBC, which was my first preference. So then I chose not to apply to any other colleges.
Sure, sure, sure. And for this application process, you had to write some test like GMAT, TOEFL, etc.
Yeah. So what happens is with any MBA programs, GMAT, GRE is mandatory, and they definitely take that into account, including UBC. But one of the good things that UBC offered me a GMAT waiver. They basically looked into my work experience and my undergrad scores. So in case you come with stellar undergraduation scores, which are relevant to some of the STEM programs or business foundations that UBC has to offer, they take those factors into account and give you a possible GMAT GRE waiver. I am actually lucky enough. I'm in the select few students out of my batch of 100 people who have been offered the GMAT GRE waiver. But it completely depends on your undergrad scores, predominantly, and your work experience. Um, Lately, what has started happening is, and this is something I want to share with the viewers, is that a lot of business schools have started giving waivers based on your pre-MBA experience, right? So my request to people would be to like research more about these institutions that offer such waivers and see if you fit into a criteria. Because if you get a GMAT GRE waiver, you're actually saving a lot of your time and effort.
Yeah, yeah, sure. So you didn't have to give like GMAT or TOEFL, all were waived for you, or you had to give something at least?
I actually had to give an IELTS examination because that was a criteria for my Canadian visa application, but my university waived off, like UBC waived off everything for me based on my existing knowledge and criteria. So.
And did you have to also put any recommendation letter along with your application?
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So UBC, even though, so for example, for your GMAT GRE waiver, there is a separate application altogether, right? And then for your entire MBA application, you had to, of course, write, share basic details and information about your undergrad course, or if you have done your master's course, your leadership experiences, and so on, your resume, work experience, and then you will have to like respond to two or three essays. These are essay questions that reflects a lot about your journey. They basically want to understand what kind of a person you are, what kind of leadership qualities you have, where have you been able to demonstrate those leadership abilities in your run up to application for your MBA program. They also try to ascertain whether you are culturally a good fit for that university. So always remember that every university has a particular culture. Every business school has a particular culture fit that they look for in their alumni, because they want these alumni when they go out of their business school program to demonstrate the values that this particular school has. So they want to ascertain whether you also come with those values or not. So I had to write multiple essay questions. I had to demonstrate a lot of my leadership experience as part of my application journey. Yeah.
Sure. And you had to find like two, three recommendation letters. So you got it from like some professor or
Yes.
somebody.
Y- Yes. Yes. So again, the criteria is again it differs, right? Depends on your years of work experience. Because I have more than 5 years of work experience, I was eligible to give two professional recommendations. I believe with, let's say, if you have less than 3 years, for example, even though if you're applying for an MBA program, you really need. My recommendation would be to come with a decent amount of work experience, because your class cohort is full of experienced people in terms of work ex. However, if you have a decent number of work experience, sometimes they do allow an academic recommendation as well, which is where you can go to your professor. In my case, I got two professional recommendations because I was meeting the bar.
Yeah, sure, sure, sure. And once you did all your application and you got your admit and like the letter, you were offered some scholarship along with that.
No, so that's another thing, right? Which is what people need to be mindful of. If you're going for a GMAT GRE waiver, there's a very high possibility that you might not be eligible to be selected for the scholarship that the university is offering you. So that's basically a compromise you will have to make. So pick your battle accordingly, which is where I ended up applying to external scholarships when I did not get a scholarship from UBC.
So this external scholarship, like you mentioned on your LinkedIn, you got after going to like joining UBC or it was beforehand?
It was beforehand. So in my context, I applied for KC Mahindra scholarship. So KC Mahindra is a scholarship which is offered by KC Mahindra Education Trust. Mr. Anand Mahindra, who is the chairman of Mahindra Group, is basically one of the patrons of the KC Mahindra scholarship or the trust in general. What happens is, again, there's a big catch with regards to external scholarship. There are very less scholarships for MBA applicants. And my research tells me, after speaking to a few scholars, is that because the industry experts and foundations see MBA as a cash rich program because they believe that it will have a strong return of investment. Normally, they have very limited scholarships. So, KC Mahindra was one of the scholarships that I was eligible to apply for because I was going for an MBA. I'll just add a few more things about the KC Mahindra scholarship because I believe that will answer the questions. I think it is a interest-free loan scholarship that KC Mahindra offers, which is a fantastic thing. I believe like if you go for MBA programs, MBA is a very expensive program, and you end up taking loans, which leads you to pay humongous amount of interest amounts. However, KC Mahindra offers an interest-free loan as a scholarship. But I think the most iconic part about the KC Mahindra scholarship is, of course, the money is fine. I think that really helps. But you are interviewed by Anand Mahindra. Like Anand Mahindra has took my interview when I was applying for the scholarship program, and I think it's a fascinating experience. You get to learn a lot from the panel that sits in front of you, and you get to create and meet a new network of people who also end up getting the scholarship. So overall, I think the journey in general is really great, but it definitely adds some financial value also to your MBA experience.
And it's like the financial value is decided based on the interview, or is it like a fixed amount for all the recipients?
So there are two. Depends on how it works. So this time there were 2,300, almost 50 applications that had come in, and they shortlisted 100 people to appear for the interviews. They invited 100 people to come to Bombay and appear for the interviews. And then they offered, so the scholarship allocations fell like this. Three people got 10 lakh scholarship as interest-free loan. Another 50 people got almost 5 lakh, which is where I got a 5 lakh scholarship interest free loan. And then there were another 50 or 40 people who got 1 lakh as a scholarship loan. What I am made to believe is that this number varies every year. Last year, they also had similar applications. 100 people were invited for the interview, but only 50 people got the scholarship and other 50 did not get the scholarship. I think it also depends on the inclination of the panel and how much value do they see with the applicants who are coming on board. This time we were told that the application pool was really nice, so they did not want to disappoint anybody. So they ended up giving some amount to every single person who came for the interview.
So psychologically speaking, if everyone gets some amount, is better than, let's say, half the people rejected. What do you think?
That's definitely, I think it's also validates a lot of your effort, I would say, because for example, if you ask me honestly, a business school program which will cost you, let's say, 1 crore in an Indian rupee or more than that. If you go to US, it's way more than 1 crore, to be honest. 1 lakh rupees will not have a significant financial value, right? It's not going to change your dynamics whether you can do the program or not do the program. But it definitely is a good boost to your confidence because you have sat inside a room with a bunch of very important, like-minded people who validated your thoughts and your aspirations. And I think that really has a huge motivation on young people who are trying to find their way in a foreign country. So I believe that is truly remarkable.
And I think because of this few lakhs of scholarship, people will end up applying for the rest of education loan or somewhere. Like their parents will also help them because
Yeah,
they'll see that, okay,
yeah,
this person is getting few lakhs from whichever source. So, maybe we can help, or, we should get the banks, etc., and things like that. So it also validates and like
yeah.
parental, I mean, it creates more parental pressure, you can say, for students.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Like in my case, my parents were fine. Like money doesn't matter, but like my interaction with Mr. Anand Mahindra, I don't think I would have had a chance to meet Anand Mahindra, Mr. Mahindra, any other way other than this interview and sit in front of him and answer questions. So for me, that was my boost. Like I was really happy that I got a chance to speak to him. I think everybody had their own motivations when they applied for this program.
Correct, correct. And they also got some of the fame side of it, right? Like because like 100 people got scholarship from Anand Mahindra. So Anand
Yeah,
Mahindra also becomes famous. And the actual scholarship is the interest, if you think in a very financial terms, because the
yeah,
principal you have to still return. It's more the interest is the real
correct.
scholarship.
Absolutely, absolutely,
Sure, sure.
absolutely.
Okay. Okay. So after and this money was given to you like after you joined UBC, or it was like given upfront before only to take care of all the expenses?
I mean, I mostly they send it to the students before they leave the country, just to ensure that all the bank regulations or any compliances are taken care of while the student is in the country.
And everyone has to, these 100 people have to like go to Mumbai for a day or two to clear all
Yeah,
the
it was a
interview.
2-day interview. That's correct.
Okay, sure. In their own office, probably with their own private
Yeah,
cabin.
at the headquarters. Yeah, yeah,
But,
yeah.
so you get to visit the headquarter also. That's additional
Yes,
advantage in
yes,
a way. Sure.
yes,
So once you got
yes.
all this sorted out, you applied for visa. So how was your visa process? Any hiccups you encountered? What was the time duration?
Yeah, I think so I applied for my first visa in Canada. What happens is it's not visa, they call it study permit. So I applied for my study permit in the first one in March, end of March, and it got rejected. So lately, the Canadian immigration laws have gotten a little more strict in terms of how they want the immigration laws to be enabled, which has also made some aspects of the applications to be a little more tricky. So I applied the first time in March, and my application got rejected because they were not really convinced with the financial proofs and my willingness to pursue my higher education in Canada. So then I went back and I reapplied again in the month of June, and then I heard back in like a month's time. Was it a complicated process? Yes, it was complicated because we were really unsure of how, because unlike until last year, it was very different. And suddenly this year, they got more strict in terms of how they want the student community or international students to come to the country. But overall, all said and done, I think by the time the visa, my permit came, it was a smooth ride, which is where I think my scholarship interview happened after my visa permit, like my study permit came in. So it had no relevance to that. I had already like completed all the processes and all. Um, yeah.
So
But any
in this,
particular questions around the visa?
yeah, in this two study permit application, did you change any documentation? Like, did you take any help from any
Yeah.
agency, or you did everything by yourself?
No, so I did everything by myself. Like for my MBA applications, I definitely had a consultant who helped me prep for my entire application. But for my visa application, I did end to end everything on my own. It's a super easy process. One of the other good things about UBC is that UBC, I'm part of Sauder Business School, right? So Sauder has a dedicated immigration advisor who helps international students with their visa processes. So I never really had to go for any external help. I got help from the Solder advisor, and they have been a great help, to be honest. So if you are an international student looking to move abroad, please write to your university. I'm sure they will have some advisor who can help you with the immigration processes, and you might not have to spend money separately to do that in India.
Yeah, I mean, one is obviously, let's say they may have an advisor. Other is probably just get in touch with some alumni senior kind of who just recently graduated.
Yeah,
Maybe.
the only catch is because the immigration laws might change or they might keep changing. Sometimes they are not updated. While as the immigration advisor might be in tune with immigration laws. Also, another interesting thing is what happens in business school programs, and I'm sure it happens with a lot of graduate school programs as well. A lot of people come with their spouses and children. So if your entire family is moving in, you might need a specialized support because you have a different application. Your wife or your husband might have a different application. Your children might have a different application. And then it gets super complicated, right? And I know a lot of my peers have come with their families. So it's always better to talk to somebody who understands the local immigration law better. That's my advice. Of course, people are
Sure,
free to
sure.
choose their own. Yeah.
And what about the accommodation? How did you book your accommodation at UBC?
So I actually had both the options. I had a student housing option as well as I can go for an external housing. So in UBC housing, of course, once you get your admit, you can apply for a student housing through the required channels. And based on your preferences, so you have preferences between shared rooms, dorms, single bedroom apartment, studio apartment, and so on. The cost will vary accordingly. Once you do that, you will be put on a wait list. Let me tell you, UBC has a huge wait list because there are also undergrads who are applying. There are graduate students applying. Um, I did not hear back from UBC Housing until the end of July, but by then I had already signed a lease outside. So the other way to find accommodation outside is that you have Facebook groups, you have Marketplace. We have something called Craigslist, Jumper. We used all these resources to find housing for us. And I stay very close to the UBC campus. I stay only 5 minutes away, which is not actually very far from UBC. But I also heard back from student housing as well. It's just that I did not choose to take it because by then I had already signed the lease here. You have both the options. My recommendation would be to go for external housing because UBC housing is subject to availability and there's a long wait list. If you have a good luck, you might get it. You may not get it, but there's no harm in applying and keep yourself waitlisted in the process.
UBC housing is a bit more expensive than external housing also, or the other way around?
It depends on what you're opting for. In case you're opting for like, let's say a single room in a shared flat, it will be practically very less. And so I would say there's not a major difference, but UBC housing might be slightly cheaper than what you get outside. But then there are added benefits too. Like for example, UBC housing will be more or less located around the campus. But if you have to go a little far from the campus, there's nothing much around. So then if you stay somewhere in the middle, you can access other aspects of the city as well. I truly believe that if you're moving to a foreign country, one realization I had in the last 1 month is unless you get exposed to like local culture and ecosystem, I don't think it adds a lot of value to your learning and education. And somebody who is doing the business school, who is part of the business school and who has to do a lot of networking, I'll prefer staying in a place where I have access to like the network of industries and mentors and coaches and company experts so that I can add more value to my professional life. So it's a pick and choice how you have to do it. It largely depends on what you want to prioritize. If you want to prioritize good, excellent university life, definitely stay on campus. But if you think you would want to see the both sides of the life, my recommendation would be to like look for a place which is in the middle of both the sides.
Sure, sure. And which flight did you take to come to Vancouver?
I took an Air India flight, so there's a direct flight from Delhi to Vancouver. I took that one. Yeah.
Okay. So how was your flight experience? Any hiccups happened, like boarding from Delhi to Vancouver, landing?
No, I think it was pretty smooth. I think the entire process was quite smooth. I think from Delhi to Vancouver and then getting down at Vancouver and the whole immigration process. To just to again a heads up, keep all document. I think the Canadian like IRCC, which is the Canadian Immigration Office, has already listed down like the prerequisites that you need to carry alongside with you when you are traveling to Vancouver. And my only thing is just keep all physical documentations ready with you. And then it's just like for me, it was just a 10 minute process. They just saw my passport. They had all the details listed from their side in their system, so it was not really a big challenge. But again, it's always better to keep all possible documentation, physical copies of it. Keep like a binder of those documents with you because you never know who might ask you what. In Delhi, it was very smooth. Like you did not really have to do anything. Just give away your passport, your offer letter. They asked for my offer letter at the Delhi airport, surprisingly, and that's pretty much it. That's pretty much it.
Sure, sure, sure. And once you landed in Vancouver and you came to your accommodation, uh, was there any like cultural differences that you observed? Like, let's say, no honking, quiet, maybe
Yeah,
two polite
yeah,
people.
yeah. I think if you, if you come from India, I think the first big the change that you will see in Vancouver, of course, I've heard from locals here that it's slightly changing is that there are very less people. Even though Vancouver is one of the most densely populated cities in Canada, it is still way less population that you have to see in India. So very less people around. Culturally, one of the biggest things I really appreciate about Vancouver is that the gesture that people have, like salutations, like saying thank you, saying good morning, like greeting a person you don't know on the streets is such a common thing here. And I think I really appreciate that. You don't cross roads randomly. There are possible ways how you need to probably stand in a particular place and then cross the road, and you can't really like cut people out, right? There's a queue for everything, and you follow those processes. Another very interesting thing I loved about Vancouver is that, for example, you're standing aside the road and you want to cross the road, and there's no systematic way of you crossing the road. A car who is coming from far will notice that, stop, and allow you to cross first, and then they will drive, which is great, right? So I think for me, these small changes were really inspiring and good to know, and I really want to take this back with me wherever I go next. Yeah.
So you felt like a king when all the cars stopped to let you cross the road?
I felt that there's a sense of dignity with which people live, and they extend that towards the other person, and I think that's truly worth experiencing for everyone.
These cultural differences are something, on the positive side that a lot of people can learn
Yeah,
from.
absolutely, absolutely.
And your first initial days, initial month of settlement, what other differences that you saw, like India versus Canada? Is this the first time you're traveling abroad, or you have been abroad before also?
I have been abroad before also, but that was mostly for leisure. This is like this is you can say formally I'm out of the country for the very first time. What else did I notice? I think the other very important thing about at least Vancouver, I would say, and I can't say it from other cities, is Vancouver as a city is a very big, like it's a fitness freak city. And I think coming from a place where fitness is also, I'm not saying discouraged, but it's also something that's not a norm that we get to see around us. But Vancouver has excellent fitness culture. You will see people running, biking. You will see most people. I know professors who are cycling all the way down to the campus pretty much every day, and they are okay doing that, right? I think that's another thing I was super amazed to see. There are beaches, there are mountains. Like tomorrow, I'm actually going for a hike to one of the mountains near Vancouver and North Vancouver. So I think that's a culture that Vancouver has to offer, which I know a lot of cities in India can't offer just by the demographic of it. So definitely something to look forward to. The second thing that the students can be a little wary of if you're traveling to Canada, again, I can't speak for Toronto and Montreal and other cities, but in Vancouver is cost. it is an expensive city to live in. The standard inflation here is really high. Rent is really, really high. UBC definitely is a fantastic university to be part of, but be aware about the cost because, like in India, for example, we have an MRP, right? Like you buy a bottle of, I don't know, like a Vaseline, and then the price that you're paying in Delhi would also be the same in Kolkata and Bombay. That's not how it works here in Canada or Vancouver. There's no standard pricing. One product which is sold for $6 in one shop will probably be sold for $12 in another shop, right? Within like 100 meters distance. And you need to be okay with that. So yeah, I think those are things that surprise me a lot. So I'm also trying to find my feet around that, but it's something to be mindful of.
What about the cooking, cleaning, laundry, etc.? Were you used to it? Anything you learned, or all are stops?
No, I have been cooking because I have lived away from home for almost 7 years now. So I have learned to do my share of cooking while I was in India as well. So cooking was not something that I was scared of. Neither I was scared of cleaning and laundry. Rather, I would say laundry here is more convenient than in India. I feel so. So I don't think any of that was a challenge for me. My only request is if you're somebody who's trying to move abroad anytime in the future, if you know you're trying to move abroad in the next year or two, and if you don't know how to cook, start learning how to cook. It's a life skill. Cooking is a life skill to begin with. And the most important thing is when you're in grad school, especially undergrad, I kind of can speak for, but in grad school, it's a very hectic week that you have, which means you cook in batches. Like you cook once on Sunday, you eat it for 4 days, and then you get to cook again. And so that's how people make meal plans. It's such a systematic way of doing it, and yet it's the most easy and the affordable way out. So learn how to cook. I mean, that's definitely my advice.
And you also use this hack, like cook once and eat 10 times.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And there's no other way out. I don't have the time and bandwidth to cook every day. But yeah. And
And
the
you,
best thing is my
yeah.
housemate is a chef. He's a chef by profession and by degree, and he's also doing MBA with me. So he comes with a lot of advice and knowledge. So it's a divide and conquer policy at the.
So this housemate of yours you found from Delhi only, or after you came here, or like through online way?
No, no, we were all connected. Our class was connected with each other through a WhatsApp group. So we figured out a way to connect and find houses together.
So isn't that isn't this a like an interesting thing that let's say your class size is 50, assume like 100, all 100 of you book like a big bungalow and stay together. What do you think of this hack?
I mean, it's again a great thing to have, but again, about one of the things you again need to realize about foreign education is the diversity. I think even if, like, for example, food that I want to eat might not be something that would be liked by my classmate in some other from some other country. So I hope the world works that way, but it unfortunately doesn't. And then I also believe that you always love to be in a little smaller groups and in silos so that you can come out and contribute to the bigger community in a different way possible. But it's a good advice, but I don't know to what extent I can practically think of implementing it.
Yeah, maybe there could be a upcoming B school or something, which can have like a big boss kind of setting that you stay together, you work together, study together. I mean, this
Yeah,
happens in
I mean
campuses
that
anyways, but yeah,
yes,
this will be
yes,
more like a
absolutely.
confined space.
Absolutely. Like IIMs, like business schools in India are exactly that, right? Like you stay on campus. You IIMs, ISBs, you stay on campus and you do, but that's actually not the case with I got to know with foreign business schools. So you're pretty much on your own.
Yeah, usually, foreign business schools or any foreign colleges, may not have that much of an accommodation capacity, and also, it
That's
wants
true.
to probably give the flexibility to people that you can choose to be like a day scholar kind of
Yes,
thing and stay out
yes,
rather than
yes,
me forcing you that you have to stay in campus only.
yes, yes, absolutely.
And what were the education system differences that you noticed? I think you were like working for Teach for India, and then you were like you did your master's, bachelor's. So you have actually a varied
Yeah.
experience in terms of education. So how do you see Canada versus India in terms of education standards?
Uh, I I think I may not be the right person yet because I'm still trying to understand it a little more deeper. But my interactions with my professors and my classes are going to start next week. So as of now, I only had orientation week and we had a chance to speak to a few professors. One of the good things about I think what I'm expecting as part of my business school is there are very less exams and more holistic interaction in the classroom. So an example would be, if you are studying accounts and statistics, there's no other way but to like study and then write an exam, because we are talking about quantitative aspect of different things. But subjects which are mostly theory, we are only doing case studies, for example. So your professor gives you a case study, you study, you come, and then you have a discussion around that, right? It's mostly dialogue. I think they appreciate that. The second, I think a great way of looking into this is, I think in India, I've noticed this, that if there's a student who's lagging behind, this college will take up the responsibility, or the school will take up the responsibility of trying to ensure that the student does well and doesn't fail. In this education, the entire responsibility of you doing well or not well lies on the student. You need to go and ask for help if you can't do well, right? Nobody will come and pick your hand but get you to cross the line. But the third part is, my professors in India, at least I was lucky enough to study with professors who were so friendly. I still am in touch with them. And I think they have been a huge support. I also realize it's the same here as well. I think professors here they have a very different mindset towards students, which is mostly towards empowering them to do better, but with a sense of responsibility and accountability. And I think that's something I think the students really, really appreciate, I would say. So, yeah.
Sure, sure. And what are your future goals? Like, you have any goals for the next few years? Decided what's in your mind right now?
Yes. Because Teach for India is a non-profit, so I have worked at the helm of social impact, government engagement, education per se. I want to work on a similar pathway, but I want to sort of change the domain that I'm working in. I want to focus on sustainability and sustainable trade practices, and working with social impact companies which are mostly focused towards sustainability. So I'm currently figuring out options of what could be my next internship opportunity or full-time job could look like. So I'm mostly trying to see if I can get into consulting, but consulting with sustainable impact or social impact practice. And simultaneously, I'm also looking for opportunities to work with social impact investment fund or impact investment process. But I would want to continue working in the space of social impact because I'm passionate about that.
Sure, sure. Coming to the very last question for this podcast, what advice would you give to, let's say, junior yourself?
I think start early. That's very important. Budget, like figure out your finances, because foreign education is expensive, and I would not want anybody to not go because they don't have the money. So start early. If you think you want to go 2 years later, great, good time. Start figuring out your budget. Know what your limitations are. Prep for the college. Know what is your college good at and what do you want to take away from it. A lot of people try figuring out what they would want to take away from the college once they reach college. I don't think that's a good strategy. Talk to as many people as you can from that college, get wider perspective, and then make up your mind, because unless you are very clear about why you are doing this, you are getting into a huge financial commitment and a huge time commitment, which I don't think is worth it. So do your research, and I think you will be good to go when you are applying for colleges abroad.
Sure, sure. Thank you. Thank you very much, Neil, for your time and insights. And it was great talking to you. So, like I was telling you off
Likewise.
record, that, I'm also from UBC. So, this is our very first podcast to somebody from UBC. So, I am quite happy to host you.
No, it was a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you so much.
Okay, then. Take care. Bye. Have a good day.
You too. Bye bye.